Ever since I released my last video on Severance, I have been desperate for something to talk about. I saw the movie Death of a Unicorn, but that movie was so bland that I couldn't really come up with anything to say about it, which has been a problem of late. It feels like the new formula is faux experimental, gory flicks featuring up-and-coming stars with surface-level commentary. Hard Eyes, Companion, and Novocaine all also submit to this equation, with various levels of success. I mean, I actually enjoyed a couple of those, but with each one I kept noticing the similarities. To finally make a video, I needed something different. Something which really felt like it was trying, no matter what the outcome. This is where Drop comes in. Blumhouse Productions is a studio which I kind of hate for their tendency to fall back on stupid gimmick horror movies with lazy jump scares and unlikable characters, so seeing a movie about the airdrop function on your phone should not be something on my radar. However, after seeing the trailer, it was pretty clear that the film would actually have to attempt to breed intensity in a more creative fashion, since the direct danger is only implied while our main character is stuck in a separate location. There is no time for gore, just a lot of scheming. Also, the thing actually seemed pretty artful, and the poster was stylish in a way I hadn't expected. At this point, I was truly in need of ideas for videos, so I went to see Drop, and I was pleasantly surprised. This movie is actually kind of a hit. Okay, so to get more in-depth on the plot, here we have Violet, a widowed mother going on her first date since the violent conclusion to her abusive marriage. Suddenly, she starts getting bizarre messages during the date, which quickly build towards threats against her son and sister if she does not comply with the person's demands. The real mystery of it all is that the airdrop messages have to be coming from someone in the room, making our list of suspects very short. This brings me to my first compliment of the movie, which is its ability to play with its setting very well. As soon as we get to the restaurant, we are immediately meeting people, and each one of them is given an obvious or subtle reason to be paying attention to Violet throughout the night. There's the kind bartender, Kara, the slightly sexist pianist, Phil, the red herring, Connor, the older man on a blind date, Richard, the goofball waiter, Matt, and of course, the date himself, Henry. I'll admit, the mystery itself is a little obvious, since two of the characters are clearly not it. One is killed in the trailer, one is so red herring that I just described him as a red herring, and the last is Henry, who the person forces Violet to poison. But I still appreciate how this array of people is moved in and out seamlessly without us ever being able to forget them or fully figure out what their deal is. Violet also explores the multiple locations inside the restaurant to prevent the place itself from getting stale, journeying to the very fancy bathroom, as well as through a over-the-top tunnel that leads to the front hall, and to the bar for drinks and limes. The restaurant is very well established and sizable, so everything just feels very full. Sorry if I just said very too much. Concerning Violet as a main character, I think she definitely functions pretty well as a resourceful yet realistic protagonist. There are a couple times when her luck gets to be a bit much, or the villains feel like they're holding back, but her scheming is mostly reasonable and pretty fun to watch. I especially enjoy her trick of using her lipstick to write on a dollar bill so much that when the villain responds, "That wasn't smart," I can't help but respond, "Shit man, yeah it was." Megan Fahey does a solid job as Violet, adding some spice to the delivery of a few lines that wouldn't hit without it. Though there are several drawbacks to her character which are pretty much all script-driven. I would say that the script is probably the roughest part of this movie, since half of it is really cool, while the other half is cringeworthy. Jeffrey Self is hilarious as the waiter most of the time, with his insane description of his stage play where he is a hat that is afraid of heights being easily the biggest hit, but he's simply in the movie too much, and the majority of his awkward fumbling failed to land with me. Generally, there are a lot of unfunny moments which feel like attempting internet humor but being 5 years too late each time. This is especially bad with the airdrop messages, which are just a ton of generic meme templates. For a movie that mostly takes its main plot seriously, it's bizarre to look back at how this all started and realize that it's like the woman yelling at the cat at the dinner table or some bullshit. Returning to Megan Fahey, her character suffers from quip syndrome, and it gets especially bad once things go off the rails and people are actively fighting for their lives. I can understand a superhero joking around in this situation, but she is a single mom. Why is she quipping? The other drawback of Violet as a character is the lack of development for her backstory. We get an intense set of scenes from beginning to middle explaining her abusive ex-husband Blake's dramatic suicide, which are effective from a story perspective, but they fail to really connect to an overall theme. The situation which Violet is in doesn't really have much of anything to do with Blake, and the movie fails to take a stance on anything which is more than domestic abuse is bad or federal corruption is wrong. Speaking of that, this is another weird thing about the movie. We discover about halfway through this film that Henry, our leading man, is a whistleblower for the mayor's office who is quite literally being assassinated through Violet. While this does add some depth to the villains outside of a literal random attack, it's still not much. I understand that this was meant to be part of the mystery, but having Henry or even our villain talk about the layers of the situation just a little more could have developed into a thematic depiction of how people lose their morality when they gain power, or some sort of feminist attachment to the domestic abuse storyline if it had turned out that the mayor had covered up some sort of scandal relating to mistreatment of women. Both of these backstories are decent ground floors, but they fail to add layers on top of that ground floor. Nonetheless, I still enjoyed Drop, and I want to make that clear. The technical aspects of this movie are pretty impressive, and are the main thing convincing me that someone behind this production actually gave a shit. Bear McCreary's score wasn't something I was picking out constantly, but the music during the opening credits was certainly a dramatic tone setter that really got me leaning forward in my seat before anything had even happened. Plus, the direction was surprisingly interesting, with some particularly sharp camera movements appearing when Violet travels to the bathroom and we get a shot from overhead. This really does become the backbone of the movie, and even the stupid giant text effect on the screen actually worked sometimes when enlarged to dramatic proportions and paired with a sinister musical cue. Like it or not, this movie is trying. And at the end of the day, that's why I'm giving this movie a big old thumbs up. There's a lot of good and a lot of mess, but I really can't see someone watching Drop and not enjoying themselves, or watching Drop and being bored. And we've been getting a lot of boring movies recently. For that, I'm gonna give it a 7.5. I was pretty much alone in the theater, but I shouldn't have been. If you're gonna give Blumhouse money, give it to them for an actually creatively done project, instead of they, them, or the FNAF movie. That's gonna about wrap it up, so I will see you next week when we finally get our first set of Andor Season 2 episodes. From what I can see, that's gonna be a dramatic ride. Bye now.